You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Sarah Gulseth.
I'm Andy Bates.
Thanks to Concordia University, Wisconsin for your support of The Coffee Hour. You can find out more about Concordia University, Wisconsin at cuw.edu.
Live uncommon.
We get to talk about Christmas music again today. Super exciting. Some more opportunities to hear some wonderful, and see, I suppose, some wonderful Christmas music with the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra. Joining us today, Roger Kaza, principal horn player with the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So before we get into the very fantastic Christmas music, let's talk for a second about what it actually means to be a principal horn player. For those of our listeners who are not familiar with how orchestra kind of functions, the organization, what does it actually mean to be a principal horn player?
Typically, there's 4 parts for the French horn, 2 high parts and 2 low parts. We actually have a total of 6 members in the section for sort of arcane reasons, the smelly feather and things, but generally there's 4 parts, and the first part plays the solos as a rule when there are any. And so they call that player the solo player or the principal player, and that's my current position. So I was the 3rd horn player back in the 80s. I started my career with the St. Louis Symphony and played 12 years. Then I did a little bit of an interruption and went down to Houston and played with their orchestra for 14 years. And then I came back as principal in 2009. So that's my story.
Wow.
How do you prepare for such a busy season? I'm excited about the Christmas season. I have to admit, I have tickets. I'm excited, but we'll talk about that program in just a little bit. But how do you prepare for this, I'm sure, crazy season?
You know, it's a nice change of pace because during the main season, we're playing a lot of classical repertoire, and each week a different program. This is an unusual season in that we've got a different pop program than we've played the last few years. But it in general, it's very relaxing. Once we learn the tunes, then we play them 4 or 5 times. I think this year we're actually doing Christmas shows 7 times. But yeah, as long as you're in shape for a brass player, which means not taking too many days off, because the muscles get very flabby if you do that. But assuming you're in reasonable shape, it's a good time of year to learn repertoire. So
That sounds
we're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun to, like you said, have a change of pace, get some Christmas music in. My husband is also a brass player, so when you talk about staying in shape for a brass player,
Okay,
I
you get the
understand.
drill.
Yep, yeah. Some bad things happen if you don't keep practicing.
Yeah. You don't sound like a professional after a while.
That would be a bit of a problem. So all of this exciting music coming up, you mentioned the Pops concert. Can you give us a rundown of the Christmas music that's happening at the SLSO?
Yeah, well, our famous Gospel Christmas with the In Unison Chorus, that's a special chorus that sings with us really only a couple times a year. They come from churches and various places in the inner city, and it's really a terrific tradition. Kevin Macbeth is conducting that, and it also features the Grammy-nominated singer and songwriter Janet Shalea. So that's going to be really exciting. So we generally put together all these shows on one rehearsal, so I'd know more tonight. Then on the weekend, we're doing the annual Mercy Holiday Celebration. And this year, it's a little different because we're being led by the conductor and the jazz trumpet player, Byron Stripling. I think he played with the Count Basie Orchestra, and he's a terrific musician. He's just got amazing jazz chops, and he brought some of his players, a drummer and a pianist and a bass player. And so it's definitely be more upbeat than the usual Christmas fare. It's all the tunes are special arrangements. If you're a purist and you want the hymn book version, that this is not for you. But if you're into the upscale, the upbeat music, that this is the one to come to for sure. Then after that, we've got a few movies. We've got Home Alone, which we've done a few times. I guess it's sold out, but there might be some tickets left if you look. And then after Christmas, we're doing Elf, playing along with the Will Ferrell movie, which is one of my favorite movies. I just love that. It's so goofy. And then finally, our New Year's concert. We're 2 shows on December 31st, led by our assistant conductor, Stephanie Childress. So that's always an interesting show because they never announce the program in advance. It's a surprise for everyone. So really some good concerts coming up.
It's just like Christmas, opening the presents. You don't know what's inside.
Yep,
Surprise.
that's right. That's right.
I, for one, am super excited about Home Alone.
Uh-huh.
My first film score concert was Return of the Jedi last spring, and I am forever changed. And I took my wife and son to Jurassic Park this past fall, and my wife said, "I can never see a film again without live orchestra."
Oh, wow. That's very high compliment. We love hearing stuff like that. Yeah, it's amazing because a lot of times we'll play that movie and I'm behind the screen, so I can't see what's happening. I just hear the music, and then sometimes I'll go home after the run and say, I got to see what was happening, and I'll rent the movie or watch it. And the music's always much more in the background in the actual film. But when we do it live, you really hear the music and the way it's meant to be heard. So it's an exciting kind of new format we've been trying out in the last few years.
Jurassic Park was immersive, so I cannot wait
yeah.
until
Well,
Home
John
Alone.
Williams scores. Yeah. It's going to be great.
Fantastic. Well, I'm sorry you don't get to see the film, but you have to stay focused on what you're doing, right? So
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true. I must admit, some of us will download the movie on our phones and try to sync it up and watch along, but very dangerous because
Yes.
you're likely to miss your upbeat. So
Oh, that's funny.
Oh boy, behind the scenes from the symphony. This is great.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. What you mentioned pops. How is the Christmas season perhaps different than much of the rest of the season at the symphony?
Well, I'm calling it pops because like I said, I go back so far here. We used to have an actual pop fury conducted by the famous Richard Heyman. And we sort of morphed that into what we call live at Powell Hall, which includes the movies and includes popular entertainers that come in and we accompany them. It includes a whole bunch of things. But basically, we're not plumbing the depth of the classical tradition or a Beethoven or a Mahler symphony. That there's, in fact, this holiday pop doesn't really have any standard classical fare. Sometimes we'll throw on the Gator's Waltz or something like that, but this is really, really upbeat. And so it's just a whole different genre of music. In fact, we really have to get into a different mindset and play in more of a commercial pop style, or otherwise it sounds very stodgy. But I think everyone gets into the groove, and we love listening to these guest musicians because they're so on top of their game. But yeah, it's going to be really fun.
So you mentioned that you've been with the St. Louis Symphony for a long time and just with symphonies in general for a long time. What have been some of your favorite memories over the years of playing these Christmas celebrations in different, just throughout the years?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember Richard Heyman had a terrific thing. He composed a special version of the 12 Days of Christmas, and it was basically acted out where he had chorus members dressed as the 8 Maids of Milking or the 9 Lords of Leaping or whatever. I can't remember the numbers, and so we did this thing. And I remember the first time he did it, it literally took almost like 25 minutes. It was so overwritten, and he finally kept cutting here and there. I think we got it down to 15 minutes or something, but he had classical quotes in there. Whenever the swans were swimming, he'd quote Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake, and it had all these little inside jokes in it. So that was one. But one tradition we do, I think we're going to do it this year, is we always let someone from the audience, usually a kid, conduct the sleigh ride.
Oh.
And some of them are pretty good. They know where the whip cracks are and everything. And we give them a little guidance, a little tiny lesson beforehand. And the audience should love that, especially, I suppose, if it's your kid up there conducting. Some of them are terrified and some of them are remarkably confident. So you can see their personality at such a young age. It's fascinating.
That would be terrifying.
I think I would love it and hate it.
Yes.
You do. You guys do great. 1, 2, up, down.
What do you love about being with the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra and just all the things that make up the various seasons of the orchestra as well?
Well, I've always felt like this orchestra had an incredibly warm, welcoming, cooperative kind of vibe to it. You'd think all orchestras would be the same, but some orchestras have factions in them and they kind of resist conductors a little bit, push back. We're very, very open. Whatever guest conductor or music director comes in, but we try to work as a team. So it's got a terrific vibe that way. I love the acoustics in Powell Hall. just an old movie theater, but it just happened to have amazing acoustics pretty much by accident. They didn't design it that way. And the hall, of course, is going to be expanded in the next few years. So looking forward to that incredible transformation, because it's really nothing's been done to it since the 60s when they converted it from the St. Louis Theater into Powell Hall. So that part is terrific. I've loved our conductors, David Robertson, Leonard Slatkin, of course, Stefan Denev's our current conductor. So it's just a real high level of music making. And yet I think my colleagues and I, we all feel kind of down to earth. We don't feel like we have to impress the world. We want to impress our community. And of course, we're doing a tour in March of Europe. That'll be great. And we can play it at the highest level. And I think we do a lot of the time. So it's just a really nice place to work for me.
I know my husband and I have really enjoyed our time, and Andy, you and your family really enjoyed our time being at the Symphony, and it is just a very warm atmosphere. I feel like we kind of know the people up there, even though we really don't. But it's just
Awesome.
it's so fun to be there and to really be immersed in all of this music. So very much looking forward to the music this Christmas season. If people are looking for tickets, more information, all of those things, where can people go to find that?
You can go to the website, nedpalazzo.org, or you could stop by the box office if you're down on Grand Avenue there. So those are probably the easiest way.
Very good. Our guest today, Roger Kaza, principal horn player with the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and happy holidays to both of you.
And you as well. You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Sarah Gulseth.
I'm Andy Bates.